Non-related Combine news, but rumors from the Combine bring us the latest in smokescreen season, guys. The latest report from ESPN, Dan Graziano and Jeremy Fowler teamed up to put out a notes, rumors, this is what we're hearing column. And in regards to Malik Willis, this is what Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano had to say. Quote, expect at least 2 and possibly several teams to be involved on Willis. Miami is definitely in, a source said. Arizona is combing the market too, but it doesn't seem likely that Willis will end up in Cleveland. Friend of the program, Zach Jackson, who has told us he believes the Browns are in play for Willis, responded to that article saying, remember, after the 2022 Combine, the Browns told everyone they were all in on Baker Mayfield, only to trade for Deshaun Watson a few weeks later.
Right.
So,
but can I make one distinction about that?
Of course.
I think they were all in at that point. It was when Deshaun Watson became available that they were not all in on Baker Mayfield. And I don't remember the timeline of that.
That was before I got to Cleveland, so I cannot.
Yeah, I feel like it was after the Combine.
The relationship was already very much
It was fractured for sure.
By the Combine. And when the no bill came back from the grand jury is when teams started lining up for Deshaun.
And I felt like that was post-Combine. I could be wrong.
I think
regardless of the
right
timeline
before.
on Baker.
Yeah, right. I don't want to get
because we could go way down that.
But a lot of things happen in this season that can change a team's mind on a player.
So the question I wanted to ask is just first and foremost, where you guys stand on the latest back and forth on the Malik Willis stuff, and then 2, it is the heart. This is the thick, deep depths of smokescreen season. How should a Browns fan proceed with all the news and reports that may on a day-to-day basis go back and forth over the next couple of weeks before free agency and the draft? Jay, you haven't been on with us for Malik Willis discussion, so where are you on Malik Willis?
I watched Malik Willis play a couple of times this year. I did the crazy thing that I spoke of earlier today. On Friday, I went on YouTube and I watched Malik Willis highlights, and I'm like, "Oh, we got
give me him
right. Call him right now. We have to have this kid here right now." And then I went and looked at his stats, and his stats were just okay. But what I learned from watching his highlights is he can make every throw, and that's something that if you're evaluating a quarterback, particularly one that's played in the league, and you're thinking about bringing him in, you've had an opportunity to see him in this league and to make the assessment as to whether or not he can make every single throw. I think he can make every single throw. But I just don't know that I'm as excited about bringing him as the guy, because I think you're only going to bring in one more, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to do what they did last year.
Oh, dear God in heaven, I hope not.
So, yeah, let's hope to heaven they don't. So it's basically like, when you're going shopping and you have a budget, you're going to look at a lot of things that you'd love to have, but they're out of your budget. And then when you start looking in your price range, there's really not a ton available. So I don't know yet that he's going to be the best available to bring in for next year. I know after I watched his highlight tape, I loved what he could do. And there were enough throws. It was like a 20-minute tape. And he looked really, really good in all of that. I would say this. We got a new guy at the top of the food chain in Munkin. If we bring him in, if they'd have brought him in last year, I would have said, based on track record, I don't think this guy's going to be the guy, because they got it wrong more than they got it right. But if Todd Monken signs off on him and says, I really like him, I like his skill set, I can work with that, then I would at least give it a grace period and say, let's see. Because we really don't know what he would look like here.
You know, I looked at this angle, McNuggets, and I never really thought about it. You know, I looked at it more of a financial ramifications in terms of how much it costs. I looked at it in terms of, okay, this, how, the sample size, how much he played. For me, I never looked at it from the agent angle. The fact that him and Deshaun Watson have the same agent, I'm not saying that that's a deal breaker, but if you, Mulligetta, your job is to resurrect, and I do think that that's what they're trying to do. I think the Cleveland Browns, as well as Deshaun Watson, are trying to rehabilitate his career, and I think that they do want him to have the best opportunity to put himself in a position, even if he doesn't win the position, maybe he could be a backup quarterback and still play in these preseason games and show something. And so if you, Mulligetta, why would you bring your new client, which is Willis, over to the Browns, which is canceling your one of your other clients out. I think that what they're doing is which is really a masterful job. I think that they've dominated the for a person who only plays 6 games. I think his agent has done a tremendous job of keeping his name front row and center, and positioning him as the number one guy on the market. And for him to be mentioned to get $30 million, congratulations, bro. If you get that, I mean, that is tremendous.
He's not getting that.
I
I know the cap went up, and I know the 30 is,
that's the number they keep floating around.
That's the new 20.
Yeah. But
man, if he gets $30 million.
Jay, I said this on Ultimate Browns. I said this is a team who said they wouldn't give Baker 30.
Yeah, but think about how much things have changed since then.
But
prices have gone up.
But prices have gone up. The salary cap has gone up exponentially.
But at least Baker he broke a record. He won. He led you to a playoff game.
Sure.
He won some games. He was the first overall pick.
Hey,
and
you're
now
arguing. You're dogging the wrong guy here. Yeah, they were idiots.
They didn't give him 30, but now we're giving him 30,
but
and
again,
he plays 6.
I think 30 is the new
rough.
20. That's what 20 used to be.
Inflation.
And you know what? I mean, now guys are making 45. So it used to be 30 was the bar.
Yeah. I just think both of his clients been on the same roster. I think they're using the Browns.
Think that matters? I'm sitting here trying to think. I'm sure it's happened where agents have had more than one quarterback on the same team. I know it has.
It's a factor, but I don't think it's the deciding factor. Like if
your job is to get everybody paid.
And I've been pretty consistent on that. I don't think Malik Willis is coming here. But if that's in the best interest of Malik Willis, you as the agent
have to facilitate
have to do what's in the best interest of your. Now, it doesn't always work that way.
No.
But
if Cleveland if they're the highest offer, then he comes to Cleveland.
Then yeah. But
regardless of who his agent is.
I don't think this is going to happen. But I think it's a factor. But Deshaun has been through so much and has been so physically broken. I don't know how. I mean, he got his money. It's all guaranteed. So if you have the opportunity to give that money, to make that money for another client, then I think you do it. It's 1 year left on Deshaun anyway, and then he can figure out whatever's next in his life in terms of if he's going to another team.
Can I ask you a structural question on the NFL? I read this, and I'm not sure. I think I know how I feel about it, but I wanted to get your take on it. Did I see that the Browns are petitioning the league?
Yes.
To be able, I want to have a quick conversation about that for a second.
Talk about that on Friday.
I believe I read this right. I think I saw that the Brown is petitioning the league to be able to trade assets more than 3 years out.
5.
They want 5 years out.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but laugh when I read that, and here's why. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that rule exists so teams can't spend themselves into oblivion.
Mortgage their future.
Which is exactly what the Browns are doing. And so now it's like going to a bank and saying, I can't afford this house at 30 years, but I bet I could afford it at 50 years, so I'd like to take a 50-year mortgage. There's a reason they don't write 50-year mortgages. To me, that feels like exactly what the Browns are doing. And I hope the league says no to this, because if they don't, we'll start trading picks 5 years out.
Yeah.
And then we're going to dig ourselves into a 10 or a 12-year hole.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I'm totally against it because
is the league, do you think?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I would tend to think that the league, I don't know who makes that decision. If you take it before the owners and the owners vote.
Well, I would think it would be an owner vote.
And then owners, who knows what the owners are going to do?
A lot of the owners might say, yeah, that's cool. Only one team's going to do that, and we'll continue to raid them.
Yeah, because the point I made on Friday is the average length of the general manager's career is like 3 years.
Yeah.
So you're spending the next guy's money.
Yeah, and I can. And
I think it's a terrible idea.
I do too.
They let
good. I thought that's how I felt about it.
They let them get it off in basketball.
I know they did, and I think it's a mistake in basketball.
Well, basketball, you have to have a pick every other year. You can only trade a pick every other year.
Yeah, but can't you trade out like 7 years?
But again, you still are going to have a pick every other year.
Yeah. Right.
So that's
the draft, by the way, I think the draft is a lot less influential in the NBA than it is in the NFL.
Well, at the top of the draft, it's everything in the NBA. Like you draft the top 5 if you got a guy.
But
there,
as we've seen, there's no surefire way to make sure you're drafting in the top 5.
No, well, no.
I mean, even if you get entered in the lottery, there's a very good chance that you don't pick where you're supposed to pick.
People still got a 14. What's the best 14% chance?
I don't remember since they changed the odds.
It's 14%.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's kind of a crapshoot.
And now they're trying to get rid of that too.
I know they are. And I'm not necessarily opposed to what they're trying to do.
But no, I agree with you guys. It seems to me, at least, less and less likely that the Browns are going to pay up the money it's going to cost for Malik Willis.
So we all are kind of in agreement that Malik Willis won't be
I
here.
don't think it's really realistic.
By the way, I worked with both those guys, Graziano and
Fowler.
Yeah, Fowler. They're both plugged in, as you know. They talk to a ton of people. But you said it, Mike. This really is. I wouldn't even call it. I think this is smokescreen season. I think the week before the draft is flat bullface lie week season, because that's when they just will stand in front of you and knowingly tell you mistruths because they're trying to put other teams off the scent.
It ain't just that week.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably like the month before the draft, or 2 weeks at least.
I mean, did you see, even we talked about the Carnell Tate thing? Like, did Schefter come back and say on Twitter, somebody said that, actually, be truthful, some teams had him at a 4.4.
Yeah. That was the most I like Schefter. That was copy and pasted directly from an agent.
These guys.
I said, bro, since when do we start going against the electric? Yeah, everybody knows that is the holy grail.
This means nothing
at all.
Absolutely
nothing. Like the laser is like
it doesn't lie.
It's almost like
it doesn't measure reaction time either because it goes on first movement, right?
Yeah, it's almost like when a cop pulls you over and say, I caught you going 78 and it's 55.
Well, my speedometer said.
But it don't matter what the speedometer is talking about. I said it, so there it is.
When you are beholden to agents, this is what you get.